Hi there, my name is Tom Bromley and I teach the creative writing classes here at Salisbury Arts Centre. Okay, on this short film what I'm going to do is give you two very short samples of the kind of work that we do and the exercises that we look at in class. And what I thought I'd begin with is looking at the start of novels. And so what I'd like to do is to begin by reading a very, very short extract from the beginning of a novel called Paul Clifford. Now, you may well not have heard of either the novel or the novelist, but I suspect you will have heard the opening of the book, which is renowned as being one of the worst starts to a book ever written. It was a dark and stormy night. The rain fell in torrents, except at occasional intervals when it was checked by a violent gust of wind which swept up the streets, rattling along the housetops and fiercely agitating the scanty flame of the lamps that struggled against the darkness. Now, this opening phrase, "it was a dark and stormy night," is quite often taken as shorthand for the kind of purple, over-the-top way to begin a novel, and that sort of terrible way of kind of using the weather to kind of set a scene. And in recent years, Edward Bulwer-Lytton has unwittingly given his name to a competition which is run annually to come up with the worst line to begin a novel. So this is the winner from 1985. The countdown had stalled at T-minus 69 seconds when Desiree, the first female ape to go into space, winked at me slyly and pouted her thick, rubbery lips unmistakably. The first of many such advances during what would prove to be the longest and most memorable space voyage of my career. I don't know about you, but I would not like to read that novel. And similarly, this one, written by a chap called Larry Brill, one in 1994. As the fading light of the dying day filtered through the window blinds, Roger stood over his victim with a smoking 45, surprised at the serenity that filled him after pumping 6 slugs into the bloodless tyrant that mocked him day after day. And then he shuffled out of the office with one last look back at the shattered computer terminal lying there like a silicon armadillo left to rot on the information superhighway. I think with both of those examples, and the original "it was a dark and stormy night," they're examples, I suppose, of where writing has been sort of overwritten, as I said, and kind of very, very purple. So the question, I suppose, is what's the right way to go? How should you begin a novel? Of course, every book is different, and there's no kind of one right answer. But what I thought I would do is to kind of show you that there's different ways of coming into any story, and the trick for you as a writer is to work out what the right way is to begin your book from the material that you've got. So having looked at some bad examples, I thought I would just very quickly give you some very good examples to show you the way that the story should begin. So the first one I've got here is by an American writer called Lorrie Moore, and this is a short story from a collection called Birds of America, and I think this is a great little beginning. When Elena was a little girl, she had called them lieberries, a fibbing fruit, a story stall, and now she had a job in one. She'd originally wanted to teach English literature, but when she failed to warm to the graduate study of it, its French fried theories, a vocabulary of arson, she transferred to library school, where everyone was taught to take care of books, tenderly, as if they were dishes or dolls. So that as a beginning, I suppose, is giving you a sense of the main character and their past and their history, but also I think it gives you a little flavour of kind of Lorrie Moore's kind of playing with kind of writing. I love the idea of kind of libraries as kind of this libraries, a sort of story stall. Another way is to do a slightly more, an introduction based more, I suppose, on plot. So this is a novel by Nick Hornby called How to Be Good, which begins as follows. I'm in a car park in Leeds when I tell my husband I don't want to be married to him anymore. David isn't even in the car park with me. He's at home looking after the kids. And again, I think that's a great beginning. You're right there, you've got the detail. Something about the car park in Leeds that kind of gives the sense of kind of the feeling of the atmosphere to the beginning. And then another way in is to use kind of description and the scene setting. So this is a book by someone called Helen Walsh called Brass, which is set in Liverpool. We turn onto Upper Duke Street, and the view sucks the breath from my lungs. And again, it's a very, very simple beginning, but what it does is it's using the description and the kind of the setting as the way to kind of draw the reader in. So those are just 3 different beginnings again to kind of books. And so in the same way as thinking of the character, there's different ways to describe a character, kind of bring them in. And as I say, for each different story, there'll be a different kind of right way for that to come about. So just to give you a very kind of brief example, If I was introducing myself, I could say that I am a writer and an editor, so I've published various books. I've written a couple of novels, various kind of non-fiction novels, and I've also worked as a commissioning editor, working with a kind of variety of writers. Or alternatively, I could introduce myself by saying that I was born in Salisbury many years ago, and then when I was young, when I was 2, I moved to Japan. Actually, I grew up in the north of Japan before coming back to Britain in my mid-20s. And then my wife got a job in Salisbury, and we moved back, and we had our children here. And actually, my first child was born in the hospital, the next room, to where I kind of way in I could discuss. Would be to describe myself as a father. As I say, I'm the father of two children, one of whom started school yesterday, and this morning when I got her up to go to school again today, her response was slightly incredulous again. So what I've given you there are 3 very kind of different examples or different ways to describe myself, either as a writer or as someone who's kind of Salisbury born and come back to Salisbury, or a father. And the point is showing you that whatever kind of story you're writing, there is always more than one way in. And one of the skills of being a writer is to decide the best way into your story, and it's not necessarily the first one that you come up with. And then the final thing I wanted to say, as I was saying at the beginning, this is kind of 2 samples. So the first example was about the beginnings of books, and the second one is about what's called the unreliable narrator. Because quite often, while you're instinctively led to kind of believe what the narrator says, one trick that you can use in fiction is to use a narrator who's not always telling the truth. And in fact, in the 3 examples that I gave you there, one of the examples that I told about myself was not strictly accurate. So my closing question is, which of those 3 examples is false? And if you come to the classes, I'll tell you which one it is.